Every year, my goal for Victober is to try to be more schoolmarm than I have before. And this year, my plan to level up is to have a syllabus for this video because I feel like nothing screams that. Otherwise, unless you're going to debate whether it's going to be syllabi or syllabus, that's the real way you can know. So first of all, I'm going to go over what Victober is because every Victober is someone's first. I'm going to talk about some of the books that I want to read, and I'm going to talk about the prompts and how that fits in. And then I'm going to talk about the things that I plan to make and the videos that I am looking forward to hopefully make in Victober. It's gonna be good. And yes, let's start here. So the first thing is, what is Victober? Victober is BookTube's Christmas in my mind because it is the thing that we all love so much. And it's about Queen Victoria, but it's not about Queen Victoria. It's about the people who wrote things in her era during her reign from 1837 to 1901. I really love this era because it is a really transformative era between the early 1800s and many things coming and the railroad and production and factories and all of these things becoming revolutionized and becoming part of the common day. And then it's also a time when Queen Victoria is really representing a return to a lot of morality and social reforms, and many of the ideas that we have around culture and virtue and all of those things stem from this era. And there's a lot of writers who are a little bit fighting back on those ideas. They're going back to different roots and having conversations, and we begin to see the beginnings of feminism and of women's rights. We talk about disability and class and the way in which people sit in these things. It also is a time of huge change because it's a period of over 60 years. I'm not the most read in this era. Instead, I tend to go a little bit more into the 20th century and looking at how it feels like to go from the Victorian era into now, and I find that super interesting. So it's also cool for me as someone who reads a lot of 20th century classics to back into the 19th century and how this set the era to have a lot of those conversations. But I think that the one thing that I love about this is it is one of those events on BookTube that is quite widespreading. It often has us who love a lot of classics, but a lot of people who, don't read a lot of classics do join in on Victober and enjoy a book here or there. And I know for myself, who tends to read all over the place, sometimes I'm reading fantasy, sometimes I'm reading literary fiction, sometimes I'm reading comics and poetry, and I kind of go all over the place, that I always love Victober because it always reminds me that even if I haven't read a book from the 19th century, a book kind of looking at all of these subjects in the last year, I have a reminder to read it again. And I also think that it unearths a lot of authors that have been forgotten. I'm going to talk about Mary Elizabeth Braddon later on, and she published 75 books in her lifetime, and only one of them is widely printed today, and many people probably don't even know that, but I only know about it because of BookTube and our talk about it. And it's really interesting to talk about the Brontes and Thomas Hardy and Dickens and stuff like that, the famous people, but it's also cool to unearth all of the small authors. And I think Katie from Books and Things is definitely known for this because she's read and hosted this for so many years now that we continue to see more obscure classics, and I find that so interesting. And I love that there's a little niche in BookTube. So yeah, whether you are a classic lover or not, I feel like Victober is just like Christmas. It is a time when we all come together, we all look forward to it, and we really enjoy it. So I also sat on the sidelines of Victober for many years where I was like, I'm gonna read, I'm not gonna read. And then slowly, ushered into the full threshold. I do actually, as a plan for videos and stuff, I really want to go through a bunch of Victorian authors and kind of do a tour of them because I still haven't read a lot of them, and I feel like some of them are well known, some of them aren't well known, and it's good, if you are a first time Victober person or someone who wants to dip their toes into Victorian literature. I think it's helpful to sometimes know who the authors are, what their books actually are, because I don't know, I hadn't read Dickens until a few years ago, and who are the Brontes, which Brontes is doing what, all of those things. It's helpful. So hopefully that will come soon. I have written most of the script and then I paraphrase as always. So I have a list of books that I really want to read, and the first one is The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. I'm so excited. This is the group book, and it also deals with many of the prompts, but I'm really excited because I've been reading The Chronicles of Versailles this entire month, and I'm so happy. This is a series by Anthony Trollope that put him on the map in the 1850s and 60s, and he became a household name for that era. And he's not always a household name now, but I think that he's one of the people that should be. This is the book that I think I picked up way probably back in 2017, and I've had it on so many TBRs and so many different things, and the fact that I've now gone and read 6 books that are not this book says a lot of things. It is a large book, and it deals a lot with class. It's one of the last serialized novels, and I think it's just so interesting. And I have not read this. It's a standalone book, which also makes it really lovely to just jump in and jump out and to have your experience, but you also have all of these books. So The Warden is nice and short, which is the first book in the Barca Chronicles, which I really recommend. But let us read the back and we will become educated on what this book is. Considered by contemporary critics to the Trollope's greatest novel, The Way We Live Now is a satire of the literary world in the 19th century London, and a bold indictment of the new power of speculative finance in English life. The story concerns Auguste Melmotte, a French swindler and scoundrel, and his daughter, to whom Felix Cartbury, adored son of the authoress Lady Cartbury, is induced to propose marriage for the sake of securing a fortune. Trollope's portrait of Lady Cartbury, impetuous, unprincipled, and unswerving, devoted to her own self-promotion, is one of the finest satirical achievements. One of the things that I think that also it brings out here is that, like, he is so funny. I really, really laugh out loud, and I also feel like Anthony Trollope has the power to bring to life these characters. I just read like 4 800-page books because I like miss his character so much. Like, I want to know what happens. I want to know what the world is like. And I just think that it's so wonderful to like inhabit a world so well. So if you haven't given Anthony Trollope a chance, I really think that this is worth it. I did not know who he was when I picked up this book many years ago, and it sat there, and I'm really sad it has sat there. But I also think that sometimes books come at the perfect time. I also wanted to give a recommendation of another book in case you did want to try Anthony Trollope but wanted something a little shorter, and I can recommend Dr. Thorne. This is the 3rd book, but the Barca Chronicles, especially at the beginning, are much more loosely connected. Like, they have references back to old things, but because it's a whole county that has this, you might have a character referenced, but if you don't know that they're a protagonist in earlier story, the information that is said is not going to be spoilery, because you're just going to be like aware that this person is married now or this person is here, but you're probably not actually going to remember what happened. And I think that this is a beautiful love story and like family, and I just find it so funny. And I do really love the first 2 books, but they both deal with a lot of like clerical church life, which I feel like might be less appealing to some people, when this one is much more kind of grounded in like the community and family. And I just want to read the first like few paragraphs because it's so funny, and I feel like, you know, if you like the humor that I like, you might be induced to read this one. And I do think The Warden is beautiful to start as well, but I can't recommend anything else because I've only read of this series, and I think that this is a book that you can jump in with some of that without any spoilers. Before the reader is introduced to the modest country medical practitioner who is to be the chief personage of the following tale, it will be well that he should be made acquainted with some particulars of the locality in which the neighbourhood among whom our doctor followed his professions. There is a country to the west of England, not so full of life indeed, nor so widely spoken of as some of the manufacturing Leviathan brethren in the north, but which is nevertheless very dear to those who know it well. I'm going to skip to the next page where we are introduced to the characters. The then Mr. Gresham was not an old man at the time of his death, and his eldest son, Francis Noble Gresham, was a very young man, but notwithstanding his youth, and notwithstanding other grounds of objection which stood in the way of such preferment, which must be explained, he was chosen in his father's place. The father's services had been too recent, too well appreciated, too thoroughly in unison with the feelings of those around him to allow any other choice, and in this way young Frank Gresham found himself a member of East Barsetshire, although the very men who elected him knew that he had but slender ground for trusting him with their suffrage. Frank Gresham, though he was only 24 years of age, was a married man and a father. He had already chose a wife, and by his choice he had already given much ground of distrust of the men of East Barsetshire. He had married no other than Lady Arbella de Courcy, the sister of the great Whig Earl, who lived in the country castle to the west. The Earl had not only voted for the Reform Bill, but he had infamously been active in bringing other people to vote, whose names therefore stank in the nostrils of the staunch Tory squires of the country. So if you find this funny, I find it funny. I hope you will. I'm currently halfway through the last book, which is called The Last Chronicle of Barsetshire. But he did in fact write 47 novels, so I have a lot to read. So I feel like I'll probably read that. I'll also probably start the Palliser novels, which is his other series. The next author that I really want to read is Elizabeth Gaskell, and this is North and South. The things that I know about this novel is 1, it deals a lot with social class, and 2, it is often compared to Pride and Prejudice, and I am totally up for that. And let us read the back together. North and South tells the story of Margaret Hale, a southerner newly settled in the northern industrial town of Milton, whose ready sympathy with a discontented mill worker sits uneasily with her growing attraction to the charismatic mill owner, John Thornton. This has been on several lists of my Victobers before, and I have not read it, and I have read Cranford twice, which is one of her short books, which is up there, and I just know that she's funny and she deals with social things and characters so well, and I'm really, really excited to hopefully, God willing, have another Elizabeth Gaskell. The next one is a little bit up in the air, but I'm going to read, hopefully, a Thomas Hardy, and my chances are either going to be The Woodlanders or The Return of the Native. Both of these deal kind of with New Woman or outsider themes, which are themes of the prompts, which I'm really excited for. The Woodlanders just seems, I don't know, I find it's fun. It's a fun name. It sounds beautiful. The cover is really lovely, which I love. You know, not to be skin deep, but, or cover deep, I don't know, page deep. No, but they're all pages. I don't know the metaphor there. I should have stopped. Anyways, so this deals with a woman who is engaged and then she meets like a rich country doctor, and I don't know what else happens. I know my favorite thing about Thomas Hardy is just that he has quadruples of love. So many of his characters have like an absurd amount of love interests. Like Far from the Madding Crowd has 4 love interests, and you're like, why? You don't need this many love interests in one book. So it is going to be great. I read The Mayor of Casterbridge last year and I quite enjoyed it. So I am really excited for Thomas Hardy. Everyone thinks that he is sad. I say bring the sadness in. The next book that I want to talk about is Lady Audley's Secret, and this is by Mary Elizabeth Braddon, and I'm really excited to read of her. I don't know much about her, and I'm slightly worried because it's a sensational novel, and it's often compared to A Woman in White, which is a novel I really, really didn't like. I think partly it's because I thought sensational meant a little more horror spooky, and it means more mystery. So I'm hoping to love this. I'm really hoping to love this. I know that it deals with Lucy Graham, and she likes to reign as Lady Audley of this court, and then this mysterious man from Australia comes and then disappears, and it calls everything into who he is, who she is, who her status is. I know that it's going to deal a lot with social class and all of those things, and I think it's going to be really lovely. I also think that this is going to be the year that I'm going to tackle George Eliot. This is also something I have said before. I know that she is a very like cilantro author, as in people like love her or hate her, but I love cilantro, so I'm hopeful. And this is Silas Marner, and I mostly chose it because it's short and it was told that it deals with social class, and I was like, cool, cool, cool. That's gonna work well. I am willing to jump in. I have read her essay, Silly Novels by Silly Lady Novelists, and it was very funny at times and a little bit off-color in other places. She's a woman who wrote under a male alias and had a scandalous life, which was very interesting. Actually, both her and Mary Elizabeth Braddon both lived with men that were not their husbands, and then were like, yeah, he's my husband, and then people were like, he has a wife over there, man. And I'm wondering how much that will play into their fiction and the ways in which their lives are lived and stuff. And yeah, I hope I like George Eliot. I tend to like most books, so I hope. And then last but certainly not least, we have our dear Charles Dickens, and this guy, and I also have that one. I have like large books of him that are on the bottom of piles, so I will not bring him out, but I think I'm going to tackle Great Expectations. This deals with an outsider, it deals with social class, it is a first-person narrative. I'm hoping that all of those things will come together. I have read 4 Charles Dickens, and Oliver Twist was my last one, and I really loved it. I liked David Copperfield a fair bit, and the others that I read, I have been very mixed. So I'm really hoping I'm going to love this, and I started this as a child and I found it very funny, and then it was big and I was intimidated and I stopped. So I'm hopeful that this is going to go well, that I'm going to enjoy it. And this is about Pip. He's an orphan. He is brought in and told that he has great expectations. I think that this is Lady H. I don't know how to pronounce her name out of the top of my head. And I think that it's going to be funny and great. And I do think that Anthony Trollope kind of criticized Dickens and called him Mr. Sentimental and said that like his social causes and stuff like that are so much more important than his characters. And I definitely feel that at times. I think I have to rely a lot on his humor and other aspects to often care deeply about his characters because I can't fully get inside them. So I'm hopeful that maybe I'll love Pip a little more than I've loved some of his other characters. I am hoping that this goes well and that I can finally like love Dickens with the love that I want to love him. my hope is that these are my definite books. These are books that I'm going to read. And then I have some other ideas for books that I'm more unsure about. The first one is Aurora Lee, which is a book that I've been hoping to read all year, so I really do hope I get it, but I don't know if I'll have capacity for it. But it is a long poem. It is written in verse, so it's pretty much like a novel in verse way back in the day. And this is about a woman who's trying to be a novelist. So it's probably a little semi-autobiographical, and I've heard that it's really lovely and that it's really amazing, and I searched for this book because I read the Sonnets of Portuguese last year and I loved it so much. It was definitely one of my favorite things from Victober. I was like amazed and perplexed, and I sat there and it just, the writing just like hurt my soul. You know, when you read something that's classic and it feels like it like just ricochets through history into your soul, like that's how I felt about Elizabeth Barrett Browning's writing. Like if you can get a hold of her writing, I would really recommend it. For some reason, Sonnets of Portuguese is like not widely available in bookstores. I searched, I went to thrift stores, I went to everything. I found this, but I haven't found a version of that. And then I wanted to talk about some authors that I would like to read something by them, but I'm not sure, and it will depend on what I'm interested in. And the first one is Oscar Wilde. I want to read some of his plays. I really like his plays. I am very interested in reading The Canterville's Ghost. That one deals with a little bit spooky, a family coming and having the ghost and all of those things, and I've had it really recommended to me and I really hope I love it. There's a few others like An Ideal Husband and A Woman of No Importance, which all seem really great to me and I would love to read, and I have this massive thing of it. The other author is Anne Bronte. Anne Bronte is my last Bronte girl to be read, and I think that I'm gonna like her the most because I've read some of her poetry and her poetry really works for me, and I have mixed relationships with her other sisters. Charlotte, I feel like we're in a love-hate relationship, and Emily, I've broken up with her. Good thing she only has one book because I don't think I could sit through another book. Sorry, not a Wuthering Heights fan. But the parts of her books that I read is really interesting. Also, Charlotte didn't like her work, censored it, and like didn't let it be published after her death, which, you know, if your sister dies at age 29, maybe you should like just let her, you know, her career go forward. Don't like censor her work after she's dead. So that was not good, Charlotte. Don't do that. So yeah, I want to read this, and I just don't know if it's gonna be this time. But this is also a book that I've been trying to read since 2017. It deals with a woman who shows up unexpectedly. It deals a lot with class and marriage and all of those things that I really love, and I think I would really love this book, and I just need to read it. And then I also always come back to Henry James because I really love Henry James. He is the one American who's allowed to squeak in because he lived most of his life in the UK and he got British citizenship right before he died. So he counts as a Brit even though he's American, and his books are really interesting because they deal a lot with the intersection of America and the UK and like how British and American things come together and how it felt. Like Daisy Miller, not always a loved book. I love it. It is right here, right? Yeah, it is right here. And I love this book because it deals with an American woman and her idea of propriety and how British people look at her and judge her and think her a slut and how that really affects her life. Like it is so well done. I really love The Turn of the Screw. I think it's really well done and wonderful ghost story and questions and thoughts and all of these things. And I read both of these books twice and have never read another Henry James. So I have a ton of Henry James around me because whenever I see a Henry James book, I'm like, yes. Do I read them? No. So I would love to read a Henry James, and if I make that decision, I have like 10 Henry James books around me. Also, I made some of the references to the prompts before, but the prompts, if you want to know, the first one is a book that deals with a stranger or an outsider, which I feel like this clash of culture and stuff like that, like it makes so much sense to have these things come around. And this is Katie's challenge. We have a first person narration challenge, which is Petra's challenge, and I think that this is going to be super interesting because so many books like are just starting to be written in first person. Like Jane Eyre like revolutionized that, so like this is baby first person narration, and I think that's super interesting. Kate's challenge is to deal with the New Woman movement and how kind of this feminist group is kind of moving up and how women are being presented, women who are educated, women who have these ideas. Like I know Jude the Obscure deals with that, Thomas Hardy, Gissing, and a lot of other authors kind of deal with a lot of things around that. I love that we see the roots of feminism in this era, and yeah, I hope to touch on it in several different areas in here, so super excited for that. And then we have Roz's challenge, which is a book that deals with class. Pretty much every Victorian book deals with class in some way, but I do think that highlighting that and thinking about that is super cool and interesting. And then we have Marissa's challenge, which is an author who is new to you. And I think this is a super important challenge because there's so many authors that are so well talked about and received and all of those things, and we all know Dickens and Bronte and all of these things, but I think that highlighting some of the lesser known books or like putting yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone and reading something else is super interesting and good. So I'm so happy for these challenges. I always love the challenges and how they make me think about this readathon and all of these things. So yeah, that is what I'm excited about doing. Some of the videos that I hope to make, I haven't filmed any of them, so none of them are in stone yet, but I have started making thoughts and writing down notes, and I'm really excited. The first video that I hope to make is the tour video, kind of going through some of the most well-known authors, kind of some biographical information, some of the things that we think about them. I'm hoping to make it kind of funny, but my humor is kind of the humor that people go, is that humor? I hope that's helpful for anyone who, like me, doesn't know a ton about Victorian stuff. Like, I definitely am more on the newbie side than not on the newbie side. So I read like 4 Dickens and 3 Thomas Hardy, which makes me feel like I'm accomplished. And then I'm hoping to do maybe a book collection of my random Victober books, because I never do book hauls ever, so I never talk about them, and I thrift a lot, so I find a lot of like really cool obscure ones and different things, so I would love to share some of those things with you guys. And then I'm hoping to make a video about my favorite Victorian books, and I have some that are like less popular that I feel like don't get as much love as I wish they did, so I'm excited for that. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the books that I hate, because my problem with Victorian books is often there's a lot of the ones that are so well hyped that I do not like. So that will be fun to discuss, because we all like controversy and hot takes and all of those things. I also have a video from last year going over all of my long-term Victorian books, where I list like, I think 40 books that I want to read hopefully in the next 10-ish years, and I read I think 5 of them this year, so starting on that thing. I also have a video that I just made in June about Oliver Twist, my feelings about Dickens and how he talked about Jewish people throughout the time of his history, and especially Jewish representation in Oliver Twist. I really enjoyed talking about the ways in which authors talk about things and then how they develop and change or don't change. I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, I will hopefully see you all in Victorian world. If you are making a TBR or you're making videos about Victorian subjects, I would love to know. Please let me know, and I will see you probably in a vlog about Victorian books. So then. And if you're thinking of leaving an orphan child, let them know they have money.